just comes out of school. I mean, for the record, people who come out of school have a lot of skills, and they tried to sell us. I mean, I'm going off on a thing, so feel free to interrupt
Oh no,
me.
go ahead.
But
You're speaking fire right now. I'm just admiring the brilliance right now.
you are so sweet. Thank you. um, so yeah, I mean, the articles of gaslighting are just hilarious because you will see articles from like Harvard Business, like from Forbes, saying that millennials have a skills gap, and that's why we're not able to get hired in good jobs, is because we lack some kind of skill set, even though we are the most educated generation, highest graduation rate, and on top of which, like, skill sets are learned on the job always. I don't care, what job it is. You always, figure out how to do things when you get there. And if you had told me, I have done everything from, like making sure that my dad got to the right radiation machine when he was overweight because only certain hospitals would take him. I've done everything on that level to making a perfect cappuccino to writing a 10-page paper about the history of Hair the Musical. I have so many skills that I don't use every day. It makes me feel like, what was the point? I spent so much money and time on education, and I didn't even stop at a BA because I thought, I believed the gaslighting, that it was somehow my fault for getting a theater BA. God help me. And there was no good option for me but to go back to school. A lot of my friends were doing it. I took out loans. I completely went on loans, which was dumb. And I went to Pratt Institute, which is a private and extremely expensive school
I can
because
relate.
yeah, because I thought I could work connections. I thought, I knew I'd been to school before and I know how it goes. I know that you got to be friends with people to get the job connects. And that's how it is. But unfortunately, my grandpa got sick and there was nobody else in my family left to take care of him at that point. And I didn't have the time or money to be spending on going, I was living in the city, so I couldn't go out to bars and connect with publishers and librarians all over the place, and I mean, those were the things I was being asked to do. And I couldn't do that because I had to go home and do my homework so that I could go home to my grandpa on the weekends and take care of him. So, wow, this is like my total life story. Sorry about that.
Oh, I love it. I mean, on my show, when I have people on or when I'm talking to a guest, I love to be open to have these different type of discussions. I mean, you really broke down one of the three biggest issues that really the millennial generation and even the younger ones that are at a disadvantage from like even Gen X or baby boomers or the silent generation. And the three things you mentioned, the one thing you mentioned was skills. Like we, the younger generations, we have more skills because we know how to multitask a lot better. With the influx of technology, our ability to learn quickly on the fly is helpful. But I do realize that's exactly why the big capitalists, the big corporations don't want us. Because if we're smart enough to run the machines way better than they think, we're also smart enough not to fall for their bullshit. Especially when
Yeah,
they try to oppress us, like if we want to unionize or we want to advocate for higher wages, they're not going to like that shit. So they like the
that's
older
right.
generation because they can stick the head to it, they keep their head down, keep doing what they're doing, and it's more of a sense of exploitation. But at the same
Yeah,
time, it's weird because you would think that the younger generation would get more of the money, but it's actually the older generation that does. And of course, time takes place, so that's another argument. But another thing you mentioned too was experience, and our society, especially with the business side, experience itself is valued way more than skill. It's almost the same thing of, okay, I have a degree, but whose connections are better? It's the same disparity. And I do wish we could, our society do a better way of marrying the two. Like if you just mentioned how you had to go from a bachelor's to a master's degree just to get into the door, but then once you got that degree, it's even harder. Or you a lot of times you found it didn't really make a difference to actually get that job versus someone who had better connections. So I think that's
absolutely. Yeah,
exactly. So what do you
Absolutely.
have to say about everything I just mentioned?
Yeah, I mean, I mean, spot on for sure. I mean, I think the, I think my biggest takeaway from getting a master's degree is that um, all of the classes were like the biggest waste of my life. I could have read the book and gotten just as much. And the point of the master's degree that everybody knew they were there for was to make connections and to go to, you know, I forget what they call them, conventions and, try to network and that kind of thing.
Yeah,
And
it's basically a tool for getting in the door. Like for instance, if you're a doctor, hey, I'm a doctor. Oh, you're a doctor. Oh, cool. You can do this and this. So it's a way of acceptance in a business society. Like no one says, "Oh, I have a bachelor's degree. Oh, that's the standard now." And well, actually, a master's degree is kind of almost the standard now in terms of our business society.
oh,
So that's how
oh,
terrible it is, you know? So what
yeah.
you just said basically explains our entire situation. And I saw your reaction, so I do want you to comment on what I said about a master's degree now basically becoming the
Yeah.
standard.
The idea that a master's degree has to be the baseline at this point is it's just like propaganda fodder for like corporate universities at this point, because universities make so much money off of master's degrees, and it's only a 2-year program, so they charge up the wazoo for every credit, and they also insist that you pay per credit for like independent studies and stuff like that, and they require you to do those before you graduate. So I mean, it's all, I mean, what was my original point? My original point
We're
was
talking about
that,
the master's degree, how that's the standard, and you
yeah,
objected to that.
and how like utterly ridiculous my experience was. I mean, granted, I went for to be a children's librarian, um, so but half of me wants to defend how intellectual it was, and then half of me wants to be like, this was a total waste of money. It was both. Honestly, it was both. I think the intellectualism, however, was
So what you're saying is
like
that you don't
forced.
like that there's a paywall towards education. Like in order for you to
No.
receive, do you agree or you disagree?
Yeah. Well, and the thing is like the paywall is its own qualification, if you understand me. So like you having any kind of degree from a serious establishment says I'm valuable because I had the money to go here. I'm
Exactly.
valuable because I have the friends who had the money to go here. And that's, it's evident in everything, because it's not just about how they teach classes, but it's also about the kind of materials they expect you to get on your own, and it's about how little they support you while you live, right? Because my first experience going to get my BA, I lived in a dorm, and there were counselors, and it was kind of a group experience. But when I got to the master's program, I mean, everybody had a job and a family, people are all ages, so like you could go to talk to a teacher if you had to, but like it wasn't a community. I didn't live on campus. I had to pay my rent, and I went broke. I mean, I literally went broke during the master's degree. And I did anything I could to make money at that point.
Yeah, and here's the thing what frustrates me is there's two parts to the story. If you're well off before you get to college, it's almost like you have to have the connections too with the degree. You have to have all three. You have to have the
Mm-hmm.
wealth before, you have to have the
Mm-hmm.
degree and the connections. But we all know regular working class people, most of us don't have the wealth. And most of
Mm-hmm.
us, even if we get the degree, the pay is so low, the starter pay is so ridiculous. And some companies are requiring you to have like experience with it, and you just got there. So of course you're not going to have the experience. And when you're a working class person, it's rare for you to have the type of connections that a rich person has. Like if you're a rich kid, you probably know the president of some university, or you know the president of a company who are on the board of trustees, whatever. It's very impossible in this entire education system, for profit, by the way, whether it's
Mm-hmm.
supplying through federal dollars or whatever. Yeah, I get that. But the whole system is designed really to benefit the wealthy and those well off. Whether it's the working class poor, you have to subject yourself to adherence amounts of debt just to
Yeah.
even barely make it, even after you get a degree. So I
Yes.
think that's what's really messed up about this.
Absolutely. Because it's the system, the university system was designed, oh, sorry, camera tilt, was designed for before rich people. So we were never supposed to go to a college university. We never up until, maybe 100, 200 years ago. Like, and universities have been around since 1100, 1200. So that the structure of a university, I mean, you would be surprised if you look at the history, and I don't know why I know the history of this, because it was in some random class that I had to take in college. But if you look at the roots of what colleges were back then, you really understood that, like, these, in a medieval society, like, say you had three brothers, okay? Like, your dad was rich, there's three brothers. One of them got married and continued to be a lord or whatever. The other one was donated to the church because the church was like the other largest power source. And one person got to go to university to become a doctor. And, at that point, you are put into a community living situation. You're fed, you go to class every day, and you hear lectures, and you don't speak back, you don't argue, you don't write things, you write down their things. You know what I'm saying? And it's very, like, this all seems to sound familiar a little bit, and so anyway, I total digression, I guess, but the institution of universities are not meant for us. And the solidifying of professionalism, I guess, having to have a degree to get a job or to be recognized in some capacity, is kind of a progression that began around the 1700s because of the discovery of the germ. The discovery of the germ was, I think, discovered by some doctors in Germany, and they, like, branched out over Europe and America and came and started preaching about how university doctors knew way more than these weird hedge witches that will give you herbs to treat your illness. And that, was something that continued throughout the early 1800s, early to mid 1800s. And there was a whole movement towards, like, populist medicine at that point. And I'm not super up on that period, but at that, like, that happened, they failed somehow, and then the university doctors ended up taking over the medical field. And then that's how in the 1900s they started to solidify themselves as, like, the ultimate authority. And again, medical doctors are different from other doctorates and things like that, but, like, that feels to me like sort of the beginning, because before that you really had the power of the church that was telling you what to think and what to do. And during the Age of Reason, right, in the 1700s, 1600s, 1700s, whatever, that started to shift, and that power that the church once held over thought became the power of the university. Exactly. And so that's where we are now.
Yeah, just to connect everything together, because you brought some facts about the history, but there's two main points through everything you said, which kind of brought to my mind that not we people, but the American society kind of struggles with as a whole. There's 2 points that we transitioned to really since the 60s, and really that's existed towards American culture, is the difference between aristocrats and a meritocracy. The aristocrat is the rich son, like Franklin Roosevelt was a rich aristocrat, went to all these private schools, had all the connections, became president, politician, that type of stuff. And I feel like the aristocrats in this country are the ones that are privy to the top education, have the economic status to not go into debt, have the connections to meet with different people, to get different power, if it'll be a politician, to run a top echelon business. And that's only mutually exclusive for that specific group. Working class people do not have, and even middle class people don't even have those type of connections to enhance their own political, not political, but social and things they want to do for their own lives. And the second part, which gets to me, is the meritocracy. You know, since really the 80s and prior then, your family, you could work at a factory at the Ford Motor Company, you can get a job, pension, good paying wages, or retirement, yada, 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 without needing a college degree. And so I feel like the reason why I brought up meritocracy, I feel like since we're talking about education, that these degrees are used as stopgates, you know, so like they know it's almost like a way to scam them out of paying workers for what they're worth, regardless of what the sheet of paper is. So like if your grandma worked at the Ford Motor Company for 35 years and made all this money, they realized that. And so now for the next generation after, now they want to say, oh, you need a bachelor's degree. Oh, you need a master's degree. And then they set the limits of pay way lower. So they're tricking you into thinking you're getting ahead, or they're taking all the benefits. So I think that's what I believe that can be deduced from this conversation. And so any thoughts about that?
Yeah, absolutely. Two things, actually. I mean, you perfectly described my current situation. I'm taking care of a special needs girl. This is a job that I fell into because I needed a job, and like a friend of a friend worked for her dad. So that's how I sort of fell into it. But as I started to take care of her, I started to realize that my background was like uniquely suited to help her break out of her shell. And that I had the training to, you know, help her develop vocal skills because she's non-vocal. So I have 12 years of vocal lessons behind me. Do I have a certificate from a vocal college that I got, you know, that I was trained by, like, you know, some of the best opera singers in New York? No, but was I? Yes. So I have the skills. I have that. I don't have any certificates. I make $20 an hour, which is good comparatively, unfortunately. In New Jersey, it's not that great.
Okay, that's what I was going to ask. I was like, a lot of times people like to say, oh, well, I make 20. Well, it depends on what city you live in, because a lot of times that's not even good enough. So sorry for interrupting. That's what I wanted to add on.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're 300% right. If I made $20 an hour in like Oklahoma or somewhere, I'd be doing great. But I live central Jersey, like an hour away from New York City, and I'm right on a highway, and the prices are terrible. Everything's terrible. The rent, groceries, everything. So anyway, my point is, when I asked my boss for a raise, I made the case. I made the stupid assumption that he would take me seriously as a human being. So that's number one. That was dumb because obviously he's a man, I'm a woman. Like, he's old, I'm young. Like,
what are you thinking?
He's a doctor, I
so
am nothing.
I'm just joking.
No, literally, sorry, that's how the world is. But, so anyway, I made this case about how I had all this experience. I listed to him like different vocal techniques from different, you know, like I had like referenced, you know, like a case, you know, like I made a case for myself about why it would be, you know, and I thought about making the offer the most appealing to him. I did so much work trying to get a raise from this man. And, you know, I told him, I said, if you wanted to raise, you know, give me a raise, then I could teach your daughter both, you know, occupational therapy, which is like, you know, hand movements, mobility, and vocal techniques. And it would be cheaper than if you hired somebody who was certified. And here's the reason why I have all of the necessary training in both of those fields. He told me that he would do it because he likes me and he trusts me. But because he's working through, or he wants to get some money out of the government, which is ridiculous because they have enough money anyway, but they want to get some money out of the government to take care of their kid, that I would have to have certifications. Otherwise, the government would not register me.
And how much is the certifications for that?
The certification, because I have a master's degree already, that's like one tick off the chart. I would have to take 3 different praxis tests, which is like the, becoming a teacher tests. And those are all like at least a couple $100 each. I would then have to probably take a course preparing for those tests each. God knows how much those would be. That would probably be $1,000 at least each, not 2. And then on top of that, I would have to spend 6 months working under somebody who had the certification. So that means I would have to leave my patient to go get certified.
So you'd be a TA for.
I would be a TA, even though I'm already doing the job.
So it's almost like there's a profit motive to all of this. It's almost like they don't actually care about education. They just want to make some money off you while they have you.
Yeah. Yeah. That's it.
I mean, I think the reason, I know this isn't what we originally talked about, but I think it's a great thing because I don't think anyone really talks about the education system, especially for those in your field that's dealing with certain kids with certain disabilities. And I think that's very good. And I do love this conversation that we're having, and I do want to continue it. So can you tell us more about that work and how difficult it's been for you? And what do you think changes could be met to make people, not only the people you're helping better, but for you to be a better person doing your job? Is there any laws or policies we should advocate for?
I mean, yeah, it would be nice to be in a union. That would be nice. It would be nice to have health care. That would be nice. It would be nice to have a raise and to, be able to have a conversation with my boss about a raise without feeling like I'm a 14-year-old girl asking for a pony. Well, all the while I'm like wiping his daughter's butt every day. I feel like that deserves a little more respect than that, but whatever. So, it's, yes, caretakers need to unionize, number one. I'm sure there are some unions that I don't know about, but it needs to be more of a thing. The other thing is that we need to value caretaking so much higher than what we do right now. Because what I do every day, even though I don't have a certification, and I'm not always teaching her because they didn't pay me to teach her, and I'm not, forcing her to do something she doesn't want to. I only teach her when she feels like it, So, I'm still drained at the end of every day. And I work 7 hours. I'm not, it's not even like a full 12-hour day. I mean, I'm not trying to, poor me or anything, because please, there are people in far worse situations and whatever. But I mean, the reality is that nobody values the labor of me actually physically lifting her about 10 times a day from one wheelchair to another, from the potty to the bed, whatever. Plus, nobody values the emotional labor. And I love that girl like she was my own daughter. She is the only girl I will ever caretake. When I'm done caretaking with her, then I'm done caretaking, because I've caretaken enough in my life. I had to take care of my family. I'm done. The fact that I was able to last, I've been with her 2 years. The fact that I was able to last this long with her says so much about her as a person. She is adorable and sweet and loving, and she is just so happy to have a friend and play every day. Then that's all she wants. And that's so great, but it's also like having to entertain a toddler for 7 hours straight. And I don't get a break. like it's me and this other woman that take care of her. The other woman also is the housekeeper. So she is splitting her time between taking care of the daughter and cleaning the house, which is huge. It's like, you know, a rich people mansion. So when she is able to sit down for 10 minutes and I can go to the bathroom, that would be nice, you know.
Yeah.
when she's feeding the girl, you know, breakfast or lunch, then I get to sit down for 10 minutes. But that's it. Those are the only real breaks I get, and sometimes they're interrupted because she has to go to the potty or because the phone rings and I have to go there and, you know, stand over her while the person talks on the phone. And, you know, I mean, it's just, you're on call. All caretakers know that. You're always on call.
Exactly. Yeah, I think you guys have like the same stress load as like a nurse or a doctor, because you're always on the call. You're always asked to really put your patient or the person you're with over your own. The pay isn't always that great. And I do believe you guys should have a union and do whatever you
Yeah.
can to really meet your own benefits. I mean, babysitters, caretakers.
Mm-hmm.
I think you're classified as a caretaker. I think all
Yeah.
of you guys, uh, we need to have your back. And I think the left in general should have a better conversation with how do you deal with those type of workers, because you guys are workers. And I think the Bernie camp did talk about this type of subject as well, but it really has been kind of non-existent since the Bernie campaign, and I don't even think Biden has even talked about it at all.
Oh, I'm
So
sure he hasn't.
I'm sure he hasn't. Yeah, but this is something that we should talk about and continue to address. And I do want to transition. This is actually a very good transition because
Yeah.
we just talked about really your background, what organization would be a part of, your experience in the workforce, especially for someone who's dealing with special needs. And I think we should talk about a minimum wage, because there are many people that are in your field where, okay, you want to say overall, what's a livable wage, but at the same time, it could raise your pay levels as well by proxy. So what's
Mm.
your feeling on a livable wage? Is there like a number you advocate for, or what type of process or policy you believe will be best moving forward?
Okay, so yeah, I'm for a $25 minimum wage. I think that if, you know, I hate to even admit that I'm a little bit of an incrementalist, but you know, if minimum wage had kept up with production, since the minimum wage was invented, I think it would be like $44 an hour.
Ooh.
So that would be super ideal. But I don't think that would be good PR at the moment, considering how small our power base is. So but 25 is what scholars agree that is a decent living wage. So I think that there should be a $25 minimum wage. I think we should stop saying $15 minimum wage. I think we should stop asking for that altogether, because if they're clearly planning on dicking us around about this forever, you know, kicking the football down the road, right?
Yeah.
So, you know, then why are we asking for yesterday's minimum wage when we should be asking for today's?
You
It's
mean a
not even
decade?
tomorrow,
That's
it's
it's
today's.
basically a decade ago is minimum wage, and we even preached about this since 2008, Obama. Then it was
Yes.
so I mean, it's just such old news. And if we've been, what's confusing about the leftists in general is when I'm a leftist, of course, is we've been saying fight for 15 since Obama was president. Why haven't we moved the number up? Like we've manufacturally consented ourselves to believing this is the perfect number to use, when if you look at every statistic and chart, the actual number of wage you need increases. Like the compromise position, we're actually shorting ourselves now. And you even mentioned too that if worker productivity matched actually the wage level since the minimum wage was founded in the 1930s, it'll be $44 an hour. So the
Yeah.
15 itself is oblique. So
Yeah.
the compromise position right now that a lot the left is talking about is 25, which I agree with, but you could even push it to 30 if you want. So I'm just
Sure.
confused. I'm like, why are we still doing 15? We could do a lot more.
Yeah. I mean, that's something I think the you know I think that Bernie soldiered a leftist movement that he and all of the progressive caucus are now sort of sliding center, and they're taking some people with them, and I think they're taking some organizations with them as well. And I don't know anything about Fight for 15, but I do know that they're called Fight for 15. So maybe that has something to do with the fact that they're asking for 15. I mean, like, I don't know. I mean, like, I think probably, Occam's razor says that the simplest answer is the most likely or whatever, right? So, uh, uh, I think, probably because we don't have a 15 already, that's why we're not fighting for something bigger, because we don't take that approach. We don't take the bully pulpit approach on the left. You
I
can
think
ask
that's
Jimmy Dore about that,
yeah.
right?
I think that's a problem though. Like the problem with the left is that we have valid criticisms and valid strategies to use the bully pulpit for, but we won't.
Mhm.
But if you look at the right, they have no validity to basically a lot. I mean, talking about the far right, no validity into their arguments, and they will use the bully pulpit like crazy. Like just recently, Donald Trump and a lot of these MAGA Republicans, they ousted Liz Cheney on the grounds that she didn't go along with the election rigging scenario. Now, look, I'm happy she left and she got kicked out, but it was for the wrong reason. And I'm like,
Yeah.
we at the left, we could go after some of these Democrats for the right reasons, but we refuse and stand up to do so. So that brings
Hmm.
me to like the next portion is like, which strategy can we go forward with to actually get a livable wage? Because the most recent one in general was like Fight for 15. There was also, Force to Vote in general. A lot of people said that was for healthcare. Other people said, hey, it can't just be for healthcare. It could be for anything you want. That's the whole point of forcing politicians to do something. So in your mind, in your eyes, what is the best strategy moving forward to get a livable wage?
Yeah. Okay. So I was absolutely for force the vote for M4A and for 15 min wage. So I'm also a try everything kind of gal. So
Same here.
yeah, absolutely. Like, the what squeakiest wheel gets the grease, or whatever that saying is, right? Like, you just got to scream on every possible level until you get what you want. That's what Donald Trump did, and he got to be president.
Yeah,
So,
I tell people all the time the best strategy is the one that works.
mhm,
So we just
totally.
have to try all of them. I think that's what the left needs to do. And I'll let you keep going.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, yeah, like, let's bridge this into the federal jobs guarantee, because this is exactly one of the major reasons why people are interested in a federal jobs guarantee. Because if so just to spell it out for everybody, the federal jobs guarantee is everybody gets a job if they want one from the government. And they would be doing anything from caretaking to cleaning up parks, and it's very similar. The idea is very similar to the WPA,
That's the
the
Works
New
Progress
Deal job
Administration. For
program.
those who are going to be watching, it was a policy and law under Franklin Roosevelt's administration, as well as the Tennessee Valley Authority, which basically helped those in the Tennessee Valley with their infrastructure. So that's kind of what she's referring to as a federal jobs program. Those type of jobs, you get different types of benefits to help out.
Absolutely. And and also different, not just infrastructure. They also had an art program as well, art and theater, which is so amazing. So many really interesting plays came out of that time. That's something I'd be 3,000,000% interested in seeing again as an artist.
Yeah, I
um,
agree. Because there's
yeah,
plenty artists that do a lot of great work. They just don't have the funding. And they can't,
absolutely.
like, if you would tell an artist or any other field that's not deemed, well, any field that's outside STEM, like science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, a lot of times you have to have like a side hustle, or in your case, a second side hustle, just to stay afloat, let alone make a living. So I
Hmm.
believe having a federal jobs program where you could tell a person, hey, this is your main passion. Okay, we'll employ you, we'll make sure you have a living wage, but in return for those benefits, you have to do art for like the government or whatever in a certain capacity, or work with this other business or yada yada yada, I'm pretty sure people would be willing to do so as long as they get a benefit in their own artistry. Like, I'm pretty sure artists wouldn't want to spend all this time on this art and get paid for it if they didn't have the option to really keep, what's the word I'm looking for? It's like we have ownership over something, like a royalty, or yeah, they don't want like their own art that they spent time with to be sold away without them having a say. I think that makes sense.
Right, they have the right, yeah. Copyrights. Yeah. I mean, I would be so happy. Even if I had a job like I've fantasized about just having a straight up graphic design job where they full-time pay me to do graphic design, and then I could use their programs for my own purposes without them knowing about it, because I usually do my work more quickly than bosses anticipate. So
yeah, the crazy part is they'll make you work. The crazy
if there
part
was
is
any kind of propaganda the government wanted me to make for them so I can make my own art, let's talk.
Yeah, the crazy part is they'll make you work even harder.
Yeah, but yeah, anyway, going back to what we were talking about with the federal jobs guarantee. So the idea is that if you have a guaranteed job with the government at a certain wage with benefits, then you would not be tempted to go get a job at Burger King for $7.25 an hour. And those jobs would have to up their game if they wanted to have employees at all. So that sounds pretty awesome to me. It's definitely a theory that has worked. I'm not a money markets person, but wading through all of these economists talking about the federal jobs guarantee, you hear a lot of people refer to it as a buffer stock. So, when farmers make too much corn, for example, the government buys up the extra corn so that the corn price stabilizes. Well, that's the same idea as a federal jobs guarantee, is that the government would, buy up this extra labor so that the cost of labor would go up. And that is, that would be lovely. And I also think that, this is changing the subject just a tiny bit, but, we can 3,000,000% marry that with the Green New Deal, and we have to.
Actually,
yeah. Yeah, that's a lot of what the Thrive Act is about. So I was looking a little bit into the different pieces of legislation that are floating around right now.
Can you describe the Thrive Act for a brief second? Because I haven't heard of that, and I think it would be great if our audience would know what that is too. Yeah,
absolutely. So, hold on a sec. Let me just pull up my notes.
Oh, no
problem. By the way, I'm really glad that you're awesome and that you're making me sound smart. So I seriously appreciate that.
Oh no, I love hearing different perspectives. I mean, most of the time my guest always teaches me stuff, so I love learning about this. So it's one of my passions.
That's awesome. You're great. And I love your show in general, by the way. I totally watch you all the time.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, you're so intelligent. I love the people you have on. So it's well done, seriously. The whole channel.
Oh, thank you. We appreciate it. We're trying very hard to.
Yeah, you guys are working it though. You are.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, you're getting good.
Yeah, we do it because we love our people who watch, and we just want to educate people. And I think we're doing this as a form of solidarity, saying that, hey, we're bringing people on with the same material conditions you have. Let's fight together.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Do you have it pulled up, or?
Yeah, I do. So the Thrive Act is transform, heal, and renew by investing in a vibrant economy. So that is like the BS name for it. Essentially what it is the Green New Deal put into an actual resolution. It's a resolution, and let's see who did it. It's on Senator Markey's website. Booker, Schumer, Warren, Gillibrand, Udall, Sanders, Blumenthal,
Yep. So I
These are
have
the
it.
people who support it.
Yep, I have it screen shared. So for
Oh,
everyone
perfect.
and for our radio audience that's going to listen to this as well, so it says the Thrive Act puts forth a unified vision for recovery that is deeply intersectional, that is extremely bold and meets the scale of multiple crises we face, from a climate catastrophe, racial injustice, economic hardship, and attacks on working people. And so the Thrive Act would authorize investments of at least $1 trillion per year all from 2022 to 2031. The bill would create a Thrive board appointed by the president of representatives from impacted communities, unions, indigenous nations, and guide the $1 trillion per year for new investments. Upgrading our infrastructure for clean water, public transit, affordable public transit, a reliable electric grid, expand access to wind and solar, electric vehicles, healthy buildings, protect our urban and public spaces, wetlands. I think it's a very good act, and this is
Yeah.
sponsored by Pramila Jayapal,
Mm-hmm.
Jamal Bowman, Debbie Dingle. She's in my district, so thank God for that.
Sorry.
Rokana, so basically
Mm-hmm.
all the mainline progressives.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I don't know too much about it other than I read it real quick today. But it seems to me that the Thrive Act is the closest thing so far to a jolly bill that I sent you earlier today, which is different, and I don't know its name, so sorry about that. But
You're fine.
uh, the Thrive Act its focus is more on creating green jobs, it seems, and moving us in a greener direction. It seems like they want to provide jobs in the same way that a federal jobs guarantee would, except that they don't specifically say the word guarantee, which leaves room, I think, for, it's not exactly a guarantee. It might not do the things that we want it to do as far as, boosting a minimum wage. So
Exactly.
that yeah, so that's why I sent you the Ayanna Pressley bill, which is a federal jobs guarantee bill and does have the word guarantee in it. And it's actually the language is pretty similar between the two bills, other than she doesn't quite focus on the environment as much, but and then has the word guarantee in her bill. So, I think that both of these bills are excellent, and that I think it's I think it's necessary. I don't know. I'm kind of trailing off here.
Yeah, I
That
agree.
was the difference between the Thrive Act and the other one. Okay. We got that.
Yeah, I would pull up the actual bill because I have it right now, but it is a lot of pages. So let me see if I can just get a few brief examples here. So I'll screen share for you. Give me a second.
hmm
Okay, so here we actually have on the screen for you guys, we have the actual bill. So the bill is HRES. It's the one sponsored by Ayanna Pressley. And what did you say this? Oh, this bill for recognizing the duty of the federal government to create a federal jobs guarantee. Okay, so let me.
Yes.
So I'll scroll and then you can let me
Specifically,
know.
federal jobs.
Yep, I'll scroll and you let me know if you see
You
anything
go.
you want to discuss.
Actually, fun story. When I read through this, it gave me a better history of the federal jobs guarantee than the Wikipedia page. So I think that's what a lot of this is right now. Once once you scroll down a little bit further, you get into what it actually is. But yeah, I mean it's similar. So the idea is that you would provide funding to local governments, and the local governments would then decide how to use that funding for their community. So what a lot of economists have said is that people are interested in going to like charity organizations that are already doing good work in the community and essentially giving them a grant to hire people to do that work going forward. So that's some of the ideas. Some of the ideas are, as mentioned before with the WPA, restoring infrastructure, restoring parks, and hopefully art. I don't think that was mentioned in either of those bills, unfortunately, the art. I don't quite remember now I think about it. But so I would also like to add that these jobs are for everyone So if you need a part-time job, you can get one. If you have a criminal history, you can still get one. That's important to know. I was surprised by that and gladdened to hear it. I don't know about drug testing. Did not see any information about that when I did my research on this. So I would be interested to know, honestly, because I mean, marijuana is legal in what, like 10 states now?
Yeah, but the problem
So,
is we have Kamala the cop and Uncle Joe who helped write this
ugh,
legislation. I mean, he fired, well, asked those guys to quit, his staffers who worked in the White House when they admitted, hey, well, actually they were applying for a job and they rejected them on the basis of smoking a joint when it's perfectly legal in the states that they were in. So I think that type of thing is disgusting. So I'm not really sure when we could actually get that through because a lot of the
yeah.
politicians, they have like a personal affiliation for marijuana. So I'm not really sure if they would even, make this policy inclusive in terms of that and get rid of those nasty convictions and really the hysteria around marijuana.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I mean, you can even see that too in the private sector where you have to get piss tested to go be an Applebee's servant, right? Like, and that's still the case as far as I'm aware in Jersey where marijuana was legalized last vote, So it doesn't really seem to matter too much on the jobs front, which is unfortunate. And I believe I also worked briefly for a pharmaceutical company. I
Oh
have a
my
long
gosh, how fun was that?
that was an experience for sure. But they by second or third year there started requiring all all of the employees who worked for that company to get a drug tested because it was an FDA requirement. So anybody who works at a pharmaceutical company now has to be drug tested due to the FDA. So many hurdles to jump through.
oh, oh, I understand. I mean, me, studying engineering, I would love to have a federal job, especially since all our roads and bridges are complete shit. So, I think all
Yeah,
the influx of labor would be great because a lot of times, especially the field I'm in, we have a shortage of civil engineers. So it'd be great to really do a thing where, okay, you want to have workers that have this little degree next to their name. Okay, we're going to get them the job first, and then that job has to pay for parts of their college. I mean, that's the parts for the college is actually the what you would call moderate position. The progressive and leftist position is okay if you are the government and you want us to use our labor to fix the streets. Not only do you have to pay us because we have to live, pay for education as well. I mean, people would love to stay on a job for 20 years if they know they don't have to worry about debt. So,
absolutely.
what type of incentive packages do you believe could work to get workers? Because there's plenty of people around the country who have this hysteria about the government in general. Do you think these type of incentives would help average workers be more willing to advocate for a federal jobs program? What's your opinion on that?
Yeah. Well, first, I should say that it's implicit in every plan that I've seen to train workers on the job so that you would get whatever training you needed for the job that you would get hired for, you would also be paid for. Um, that that's as far as like reimbursing like school or degrees or anything like that, I kind of have a feeling that's a no. Um, that's like something that I've heard boomers talk about. You know what I mean? Like that's like a rumored like thing from the past, like a job that would pay for your school. Like honestly, I've never. I mean, I
It's
think
almost like we should bring that back. Maybe that will help millennials and Gen Z. So you just really unlocked something. So let's just break this down. So the older generations can benefit from that. And then while at the same time they've seen how the exact same scenario doesn't work for the younger ones, Yet they tell us to do the exact same thing when the material conditions are completely different. So it's just mind-boggling to me.
Yeah, it's insane. And, they don't see it. The only people who see it are people who are on the ass end of that stick.
Yeah, I
It's
100% agree.
yeah.
Yeah, so you mentioned art in general. I do believe, especially in today's society, art in terms of the beauty, in terms of really the long process it takes to make good art, due to our capitalistic background, everything's got to be quick and easy, everything's got to be repetitive, everything's got to be interchangeable. How do you believe a federal jobs program would benefit some workforces that aren't like a GM where it's just everything's the same, every part's the same, and it has to be interchangeable? Because there are some fields of work that are very complex that don't always have the exact same process and aren't really as lucrative. So, what do you believe the federal jobs program can do to make individuals who work in those type of fields of work feel valued and can live?
That's an excellent question, and definitely one that I will bring up to. Oh, can I plug my thing now?
Oh, of course.
um, so we are having a leftist fireside forum. United Left, which is a group that I am the video lead for, and Real Progressives are coming together to host a series of panels on different leftist topics. Our first one is about a federal jobs guarantee, and that is an excellent question that I would 3,000,000% ask my panel, because I am not an expert. I will be the host of said panel. So I'm doing the best I can here. But yeah, I think so here are some of the things that I've heard people say about a federal jobs guarantee, that because funding would be allocated from the federal government to local governments to disperse as they choose, which I really hope there's an oversight board now that I'm saying that. They can sort of choose the job and how it functions. They can sort of, and I think that would be largely, and again, if they decide, the people who get the money, if they decide to use that to, take non-for-profit organizations and start paying people to do those jobs, then I would think that those people in those organizations would have the most say over the jobs and how they operate. I think that there is a lot of detail work that still needs to be done on the federal jobs guarantee. Yeah, as you can see, I don't know how long bills are usually supposed to be. Like, from watching West Wing, you would think it's like a stack that's huge. So I'm assuming that the resolutions that we just looked at are like sort of the bare bones version of what would eventually become a much more detailed piece of legislation. And I think that there's a lot of things that we need to hash out, and those are one of the those an excellent point. And I think it's very much a pertinent question for people who have to caretake themselves and their own family members that don't get paid for it, but they still need a job. Would they be able to get flexible hours? Would they be able to, would there be some kind of transportation compensation to getting to and from the job? Would there be healthcare provided if you had somebody who needed, caretaking provided if you had somebody that needed caretaking? Healthcare will be provided. That is part of the bill. So I mean, those are questions that I don't know have specific answers. But I do think that the more we talk about it, and the more that we find questions to answer, the better it is for the bill.
I
and for the
agree.
people.
And I think the problem we have on the left is how we get this passed in legislation. Because I feel like we've been talking, like, all the politicians know what's up. They just don't want to do it. And a lot of times there's institutional barriers, like unelected bureaucrat, Senate parliamentarian tanked the $15 minimum wage, so that's laughable. But
Yeah.
in general, I've noticed with a lot of these bills and legislations, especially in recent history, like look at the COVID bills, for instance. It was 1,000 pages long, and like it's bigger
Right.
than my hands on the screen. You can't even see it.
Right.
And there's other times in American history where each bill has like many sections and it's voted on just that bill. So,
Mm-hmm.
due to the political climate, I find it very difficult for standalone bills that work for American people. Because let's be real, I mean, America, they're not going to do bills for regular working class people unless they're forced to. But at the same time, I've noticed with these big COVID relief bills, what progressives could do is at the end of every legislative session, like when they go on summer recess or when they go on Christmas recess, sneak and cram this bill into that whatever giant bullshit they're trying to pass. Because what I've
Mm-hmm.
noticed is that even if you understand that these bills are wrong, you know it's going to pass anyway, well, still
Mm-hmm.
rail about it. But at the same time, sneak a little goodies in there that's going to actually
Mm-hmm.
work. Because the likelihood of the establishment gutting the entire bill that has all the nooks and crannies they have for big corporations, all because of working class people getting something, isn't going to happen. So, do you believe that's a necessary strategy we can take, or is it really advocating for a bare bones bill by itself better strategy?
Again, I'm a try everything kind of gal. If it takes a little, Tallahassee switcheroo to get it in there, do it,
So
right?
I'm right with you. I'm
Whatever.
right with you because we're trying. It's amazing. The left, we have to do it this way. Well, here's the perfect political way, and the right just like, I'm just gonna fucking do it.
Well,
So
here's the most important difference between the right and the left. The right has the right is literally supporting the people with the money, right? And the left is supporting the people with no money and no power.
exactly.
So the fact that the people on the right can slip in stuff like tax cuts for the rich or, extra war funding, whatever, that stuff is easy for them because everybody's on the same team already. The corporate Dems and the Republicans, they're all in it together. They're all getting, from the same donors. Whereas the regular people are fighting everything else, the entirety of this capitalist system that we're stuck in. So the idea of us slipping into even if I believed the best of AOC right now, which I'm having trouble doing honestly, even if she, woke up one day and was like, I'm going to slip something into this bill, I think that they wouldn't get away with it. You know what I'm saying? I think that when somebody sneaks something into a bill, it's because they all don't want to talk about it, not
Exactly.
necessarily because it's a secret,
Also,
right?
also too to add, and I'll let you continue. It's even
Yeah,
harder when you're a prominent lefty like AOC. Like she has
yeah,
almost more Twitter followers than Nancy Pelosi, and she's nationally known. She has a national profile. So the likelihood of her herself passing something without anyone knowing is very slim because she's tried
right,
it and they all call her out on it. So I do
right.
think it would take a little known senator or little known congressperson to slip it in the bill as a means of the establishment saying, okay, this little bug just wants this. Let's give it to him and shut him up. Whether it's AOC, they realize if we give a prominent lefty something, it will be like a snowball effect towards all the other stuff. So I do want to add
Mm-hmm.
that context.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, so I also that reminds me of a tactic that I was discussing with Mitch Randall on my show that hasn't come out yet, about national ranked choice voting, is that if you get enough states to decide to do something, then it becomes federal law. So could this work with a federal jobs guarantee? I'm not super sure because, the funding would be coming from the Fed, maybe. You know what I mean? I don't know.
So
It might be something.
I think what you're referring to is ratifying something to the Constitution. So I think how it works is you have So I think the scenario you're talking about is like if you want something to go into law federally, you have to have the endorsement of like, I don't know, what, 2/3 of all the states or whatever, and you would amend that into the federal constitution. So,
Yeah, no, that's not what I'm talking about, but I do
okay,
know what you mean. Yeah.
yeah.
I'm talking about, like you can in, I think maybe 23 states or more, you can propose as a citizen a ballot initiative, right? And if that ballot initiative is voted on in your state, then it becomes law. That's how, or was it a ballot initiative or a resolution? I can't confuzzled with the words now, but
Yeah, we both over here
but that's
trying.
how yeah, but that's how Jersey legalized marijuana. It wasn't a top-down decision. That was something
Oh
activists
yeah,
did.
yeah. That's a ballot. Yeah,
And
that's a ballot
then
initiative.
right. Thank you. Okay. Um, so I believe that like marriage equality was going in that direction as well before DOMA. I believe that it was like a state by state thing, and then finally Obama was like, "All right, let's do this." I think, unless that happened because of the state by state thing too. I mean, it's actually like if you think about how many major changes have been enacted that way, it's kind of amazing. Actually, I'm a huge feminist, in case you couldn't tell, and I'm particularly interested in feminism as a movement. And like, did you know that there is no law basically saying that women can own property? There's no one law federally
Ooh.
speaking that women can own property. That means that state by state, they decided that women can own property, and eventually it just became part of the legal conversation. And I assume that they just swept women into the language that was already existing for men.
Right. So for our audience is wondering, how does this have to do with getting the strategy passed? Well, here's why.
Oh yeah, please. I'm sorry.
There's two ways that the federal government and the state governments work. So if all the state governments have come to a consensus, like, okay, let's say Colorado, California, Michigan, whatever, how many states come together and they all agree on the same law, well, the federal government, in the eyes of the general public, doesn't want to be behind the curve. So then they pretend and they come up and they amend what the states agreed on in terms of federal law. But it also works the exact opposite way. And the way it worked in general, the more terrible way was with Reagan in the 80s with the drinking age. Like Reagan himself used the federal government to essentially bully all the other states in terms of rhetoric from raising the drinking age from 18 to 21. So that's just a bad way to do it, but it is relevant in terms of strategies used to get certain pieces of legislation passed, whether it be federal or state law.
Absolutely. So I think the original question was like, what tactics do you think we could use to get this passed? That possibly could be one of them. But at the end of the day, I like to think of, like our government as being a tool rather than being a set of rules that confine us. So if there is the political will, meaning that the entirety of society rains down upon AOC and other people to encourage them to push for this harder, then they will find a way. I think that they're just like, at least what I feel my personal contribution to this fight is motivating people to put pressure on our elected officials. Because at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter whether or not AOC is selling us out or who she really likes behind the scenes or who she's giving money to, whatever. If we can pressure her to do the things that we need her to do, then it doesn't matter. And that's I think where we need to focus. I think that the more specific that we make bills, the better it is to convince others that this is a valid idea and something to push for. And I think that, it needs to become a movement, and it's probably going to be something that will get voted on and voted down a couple of times before people finally get it in there. And that's part of the process of honing a bill, and that's also part of the process of a populace understanding what exactly the problem and solution is that's being presented. Right.
I 100% agree. And this is a great conversation we'll have. I'm loving this already, and I'm loving it all so far. And what you said really helps you in the front end, because if you start off with the policy clear and concise, it's very good for messaging, and if it's also clear in terms of how the legislation is written initially, it makes it very harder for, America, the political class, the billionaires to find loopholes in said legislation that'll hurt us on the back end. So I think everything you're describing is perfect so far.
Absolutely. Thank you. And it also helps us sort of combat like BS before it starts, because like we were saying, when AOC proposed the Green New Deal for the first time, she, I believe, proposed it as like sort of a memo. It was like a 2-page memo with some notes on it.
Oh, I remember
and it
that.
wasn't. Yeah, and it wasn't like this is not to fault her whatsoever. I mean, like I wouldn't know how to freaking do that either. But it was something that the media was able to seize on and then make a media circus out of.
Yeah, just to give context to this, when AOC did this, I believe it was in 2017. So it was shortly after Trump was inaugurated. Senate Majority Leader at the time, Mitch McConnell, he got whiff of that, and being the political asshole he is, he put the legislation that AOC wrote, that 2-page memo that was mentioning, on the Senate floor for a vote, and it got killed. So right. I think that's the danger you're talking about, is not addressing an issue correct early, because it will be used against you. I think that is because the energy when AOC entered into political office, no, that was 2018, my fault, because she started office in 2018. Yeah. So I believe the dangers of not having all your ducks in a row when you're having either a political movement or you're advocating for policy, it will be used against you by the machine if you're not prepared for it.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And they're waiting for you to trip. They're waiting for, I mean, they pay people to watch you every second of the day, right? Like there are people, I mean, probably even people that Pelosi has in her office that just reads AOC's Twitter feed. Like that's all they do. Right. Like they have the resources, they have the time, it is in our best interest to put together the best possible package before taking it to the public, or, larger than the leftist community, perhaps.
I 100% agree with you.
Yeah.
Wow, we covered a lot of stuff. I kind of ran out of stuff to talk about. So is there anything else you want to address or talk about that you're passionate about?
Oh God, I could ramble on forever about anything, as you may have noticed.
Oh, same for me. I love having these conversations.
Absolutely. I mean, and it's so good. Like, this is weird maybe, but I feel like I don't get to talk to people your age that much. Is that weird? I mean, I feel like I worked a lot with people who were younger than me, but most of them were millennials because of the time period, and I'm thinking about it. But it feels like even on those jobs, like I worked a lot of, like I said, I worked a lot of retail, coffee jobs, and you don't get time to get to know people. You don't, I mean, and that's something that they talked about, during the Amazon push,
drive.
Right?
Yep.
Right. Is that like they don't even really have time for breaks, and they work crazy hours. I mean, like I've worked 10, 12-hour shifts before, but not every day. That's epic. Like
I think that's by design by the system, because if we had time to discuss how the system's fucking us, we wouldn't stand for it. So that's why by nature, the capitalistic American machine wants you to keep your head down, wants you to be overworked, wants you to be devalued, so they can keep exploiting you without you fighting back.
Absolutely. Absolutely. They don't want you to think. They don't like it when you think. That's honestly, because my background is a little weird in that when I was young, my mom was a private school teacher, so I ended up going to private school from 5th grade onwards, and I got to sort of, you know, experience a privileged education. Um, in which I was asked to think critically about things. My opinion was always valued. Like, I mean, like, even as like the fact brat among rich kids, like I still felt like I could, have an opinion about To Kill a Mockingbird or something. Like I felt like my contribution to the conversation was not only welcomed but assumed, invited. Whereas when I came into the real world where everybody else lives and works and probably goes to school too, and like you're not allowed to have a thought. You're not allowed to have an original thought. You're not allowed to change the system. You're not allowed to do things differently because that's not what the handbook says. You're discouraged to think. And I mean, even when I was in a situation where I felt like when I said that I worked at that pharmaceutical company, it was my first and only office job. Okay, so I had worked retail for years, and then all of a sudden I found this office job. I was the secretary. So I still got people coffee. I just sat at a desk essentially. But it was a situation where it was a small office and they made you feel like you were welcome to contribute ideas, but it was unspoken that you shouldn't do that. And you shouldn't do that if you're one of the peons specifically. Like if you were, because it was a laboratory I worked at, so if you were a scientist and you had an idea about a project that you were assigned to do, then yeah, you can have an idea. But if you were a peon like me, and I wanted to, I had to deal with this ridiculous filing system that they came up with. And it was just like, it was like a Frankenstein of like different systems that they put together. And I was like, can I just completely redo this? I made like a whole presentation, like, like a whole PowerPoint presentation. And like, I made them all sit down and listen to me and stuff. And they all looked at me pissed off. They were pissed off at me for even having said any of this. And the main boss, the big boss, said to me like, oh yeah, well maybe we'll think about it. We'll think about it. And then after the fact, I was like, passive aggressively punished by my direct boss and by her other bosses on her level, like other supervisors on her level.
Yeah, I think that's a problem we
Um,
have. Well, the
yeah,
problem in like professional business is like you have a worker, a person who's very knowledgeable about their field and will advance ways to be more efficient, better for you personally, and better for your customer. But it completely differs from that company's ideology. And the problem with those big business people is that that's control. That's how they control you. We have our own company ideology. We want you to do this, like we've mentioned today, keep your head down, shut up and do the work. And when
yeah.
you're being outspoken about that, and a lot of times being smarter than them, they can't handle that. So their best alternative is to shut you down and make you look like you're the problem. And
Mm-hmm.
so thank you for addressing that, because I think people across the country who are in other different fields, when they try to address things to better the company, they're oftentimes shut down.
Yeah. And please know it's not you. Please know that if you come to somebody official with a brilliant idea, it's not you. You have to know that it's not you. It's the company. It's them. It's their ego. It's everything but you. You have to know that. I feel like that's my one lesson to impart to the world.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you. I mean, I think our conversation today has been great. I mean, we've discussed education. We've discussed child take care labor. We've also discussed a minimum wage, and we've also discussed really a federal jobs program. And so I really am looking forward to your work you're going to do next. Also, the organization you're part of, the panels you're going to be doing, and I really would love to keep in touch with you to see what you're doing and what I could do to connect and get some more exposure.
Yes, absolutely. I would love to have you on my show, Millennial Splaining, number one. And that's okay that you're not a millennial. It's no problem. No judgment. I like to think of millennial splaining as like I do some of the splaining and then other people do some of the splaining to me. Okay. So, and also, you'll be, we're going to send you an email, but we're inviting a few, podcasters to come and join us for our Q&A session. This event, let me just real briefly say, the Leftist Fireside Forums is what it's called. And, we will be, doing the panel in a Zoom conference, like a Zoom webinar. So to attend the live conference, you need to go to either ourunitedleft.org or realprogressives.org and sign up. I believe it's .org. If it's .com, I'm so sorry. You need to go and sign up for our email lists or go and follow us on Twitter, and you will be notified when and how to register for this webinar. And so that's how you'll be able to attend live. Anybody attending live can submit a question, but we are inviting podcasters. We're inviting you, we're inviting, I don't even know because nobody said yes yet, but we're inviting you, we're inviting, one of the Rational National, we're inviting Ryan Knight, as well as a bunch of other people.
Yeah, friend of the Fred Hampton Leftist, Ryan Knight. He's great.
He is awesome. I love his podcast because I feel like his journey was very similar to mine, as far as like radicalization goes. I feel like the final straw really was more recently perhaps than, I was a Warren supporter. Same. And then I went to Bernie. Same. And then, yeah. And yeah. I was always a leftist, though. That's the thing. It's not that like Bernie was too left for me or anything. I just thought that he didn't have the personality to really, fight Trump. I thought that Warren was more of a iron fist, but clearly that didn't work out. I mean, you make these decisions based on so many different things. But anyway, what was my original point? So the Fireside Forums. So we're inviting these podcasters to come and film a question. You'll be able to speak your question on camera and then speak to the panelists directly. We really hope you'll come and join us for that. So the panel itself is like an hour, and then there'll be like a half an hour Q&A afterwards, depending on how many people we have interested. So yes, please come and join us for that at the very least.
Yeah, that sounds amazing. It sounds pretty great.
Great.
Okay, so it was nice having you on. We discussed many different topics. Anything, I know you plugged a lot of different stuff, but any final words for our viewers?
Just that you should, okay, this is totally lame. I really love a movie called IQ with Meg Ryan and Walter Matthau plays Albert Einstein, and she's his niece, and she is trying to solve an equation that he couldn't solve, and she writes on the chalkboard, "Question everything." And I always thought that was the best motto. Question everything. No, don't take anything for granted. Anything that sounds complicated might be because somebody's trying to BS you.
Exactly.
Question everything.
That's a very good message to leave off of. So
yeah.
Thank everyone for, oh gosh, right when I want to end, I got something in my eye.
Uh-oh.
Okay, well, it's been great having you on. Thank you for coming on to my show, Revolutionary Jargon. This is the Fred Hampton Leftist Network. We want to thank Bess for coming on. You can check her out on Twitter as Malin Splain. And we want to thank you for having on. And we are signing out.
Great.